Well, a very good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you happen to be in the world. And what a chaotic world we live in at the moment. If you're watching this on repeat, we are in the midst of the sort of coronavirus outbreak, and with Vince and I both being at home. You might not believe I'm at home, but what's behind me is actually a backdrop. So you're learning my webinar secrets as well. So my name is Adrian Reed. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Vince Mirabelli, a friend and colleague of mine who I've known for a long time, and there's so much that I could say about Vince. Many of you will know him from his podcast, Business Not As Usual, which just Vince feels like a fantastic name of a podcast for the world we live in right now.
Yeah, thank you.
Speaker, instructor, leader in areas like business transformation, process change, Lean Six Sigma, operational excellence, PMP, a CBAP, many other things, Lego Serious Play facilitators. So Vince, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the invite, Adrian, and always a pleasure to kick it with you, man.
Absolutely. And so today we're going to be talking about enterprise analysis, strategy analysis, and the enterprise analyst role.
Yeah.
And before we get started, it's worth saying, of course, that anyone who is tuned in live, you have the opportunity to ask questions. And I will be monitoring the Q&A throughout the session. And whilst Vince and I have a few themes, we can deviate from that at any point. So do type your questions in the Q&A window and we'll cover as many as we can. So Vince, first thing to say is enterprise analysis, or strategy analysis as it's called in BA-BOK version 3. Sometimes people look at that and think, well, that's a strategy, that's organizational strategy. But what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so good question. And I'll probably say that a bunch of times today. So enterprise analysis or strategic analysis to me is business analysis taken to the next level. It's the role that BAs play on a project, but operating at a programmatic or portfolio level. So just to equate that to sort of the PM, the project management sort of escalation or hierarchy. I find that what I do, and I'm first of all, I'm really excited to actually talk about this because for years I've been known as the Six Sigma guy, and it's just, I was trying to find my niche. We talked about this a little bit earlier or off screen, but enterprise analysis is always what I've wanted to do and what I've been doing, because to me it's about integration. It's about understanding how the strategic and the operational pieces of your organizational puzzle actually align and fit together. And it's something that is really cool to do. It's also really hard, which is why I think there's so few true enterprise analysts.
That's really interesting, because one thing that's always grated for me is people will talk about business analysis and they'll talk about it being the bridge between business and IT.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, there's an element of that, but it's not just IT. It's also process, and it's also and what you're describing, Vince, I think, is almost actually the bridge between strategy and execution in a way.
Yeah, and so I know that the bridge between IT and business. I hate that.
Yeah.
Because you actually need to be able to function within both. You're not a bridge. You're the integration there. You're the link there, which I guess kind of is a bridge. But I don't like the analogy.
Yeah, I wrote a blog a few years back called "It's Time to Ditch the Bridge," and I wrote it in pure frustration.
So a lot of my content also comes from frustration. Something bad happens, I go and create a piece of content, which I'm usually not smiling as much when I'm doing stuff like this. But you're right. It's about connecting sort of the strategic element of your business, and every organization has a strategy. You've got some sort of guiding principles. You've got something. But then how do you connect that to to the projects that you're doing, the way that you're operating, your operating model. How do you do that? Because everyone's seen sort of, they look at an organization or they look at the projects that they're working on and they're like, what are we even doing? What is the value of this? And how does this actually connect back to the overall organizational strategy? We want to, I don't know, become the market leader in our field. Well, great. Well, how is this project enabling that to happen? And so by having that sort of integrator role, it allows you to ensure that you're focusing on things that matter and that are going to help you push the needle towards where you want to be strategically.
And that's really interesting, because that idea of an integrator, because I've heard, and I'm sure, well, many of us have heard and had discussions about, well, business analysis, but what about business synthesis? What about bringing stuff together?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, sorry.
And this feels like part of it, and it's sort of, for me, as you're speaking, I'm thinking it's reinforcing all of the need for BAs at whatever type of work we're working on. We've got to understand the strategic context, because we've got to have the ability to say this project is not on strategy, and either the strategy's changed or the project is wrong, type of thing.
Right. And so I see, and again, we talked about this. I think is the lead up to this webinar. I see an absolute fit for BAs, and I don't think enough of them are finding their way into enterprise analysis. They tend to skew more now into product management or product ownership, into project management. And as a result, and this is what terrifies me, and I've almost made it my mission to start building up enterprise analysts or solution analysts or whatever. I don't have a name for it yet, but because that vacuum is being filled by people that are not as capable as us.
Yeah.
And that scares me. And so you have people that are, operational, making strategic decisions, and they don't have the context and the knowledge and the know-how and the mindset to be able to do that. And that's why, I'm out there preaching on, enterprise analysis is a viable path for you.
Yeah.
And you don't have to become a senior BA. You don't have to become a project manager or product owner. The work is really cool if you can get it.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because that kind of pre-project and the strategic and the problem analysis, it's like, if that's not done, or it's done badly, or and you and I know, and most of the people on this webinar will be smiling, I'm sure, as I say this.
Yeah.
Like, it's the solutions looking for a problem projects. It's well, what's the objective of the project? Well, the objective of the project is to implement this IT system. It's like, what, really? Because the thinking hasn't happened, and someone's just gone on to a solution type of thing.
Yeah.
So Vince, give us a sense of what your day job or the role or enterprise or strategic analysis involves. What are some of the techniques that you use?
Yeah. So, and this is where I'm actually a little bit disappointed in the evolution from Babok 2 to Babok 3. I think there's like 4 tools listed in Babok 3. And they are tools that I use. So a lot of SWOT analysis, which we don't need to teach, because if we're all BAs here, we get it. A lot of sort of matrix type tools that I tend to. So I start with a base matrix, but then I will adapt it to the specific problem that I'm trying to solve. So, for example, right now I'm looking at aligning multiple different work streams as part of a major transformational program or portfolio of projects as part of the work that I do day to day. And so, up until this point, it's been running for about a year. Everybody's been coming to the leadership team with plans, with artifacts, and like presenting them in a silo. And so it's like, hey, here's my plan for achieving this process work. And they look at it and they're like, yep, looks good. And then the technology team will come and say, hey, here's my plan for achieving the solution delivery. Yeah, looks good. And that's happening multiple times, 8-9 times, but there's nobody that's connecting that work. And so, I will look at a lot of the work that I do is actually resolving misalignments between those different work streams. And then this is where the strategy and the analysis comes in, is actually taking in all of the different pieces and then making a recommendation of, this is what we should do because it's the best thing for the program and for the organization.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting as you're speaking there. We've got a comment coming from good friend and colleague of mine, Alice from Slovenia, who's put who's put enterprise analyst BA is a silo breaker. And as ever, Alish is completely spot on with what he's saying, I think.
Alish, you should join the webinar right now, because you got it, man. Like that's what they are. They look at the holistic picture. And this is where I think there's an opportunity for BAs. And this is not to say that BAs aren't doing this. But they're doing it sort of at a micro level and on their project. And what I want to, if I can leave today with, oh my God, I can't talk. If I can leave today with sort of planting one idea in your head, is that if you can take what you do at the micro and bring it up to a more macro level, then you're ready for this, for a more senior strategic enterprise type role.
So that brings us quite neatly on to another question, which is, how did you become an enterprise analyst, and how did that happen?
Yeah, so I always saw myself. So before I was everything else, and you mentioned a couple of the certifications I have. Before I was anything else, I was a business analyst. I always thought I wanted to sort of be behind the scenes, and it wasn't till I became a BA and saw that there were other people that were, if we're all BAs here, I can say this safely, that were a lot dumber than me making decisions. And so I'm like, no, I need to step up. I've always seen myself as a business analyst. I talk to a lot of folks when I'm out at conferences, and they talk about SAP integrations, and I stare at them blankly, because like I've always been in the business. I've sort of had a roundabout in my career where about 6 years ago, I decided that I wanted to turn myself into, and I kid you not, this is what I actually referred to myself as, the Death Star of problem solving.
That's amazing.
And so, yeah. And so, and as one person in an audience a couple of years ago pointed out, that the Death Star blew up twice, right? And I'm like, yeah, I get it, but I'm just trying to give a visual of what I wanted to be able to solve a number of different problems, because as I think you mentioned earlier, like you looking for a solution, looking for a problem. I wanted to be able to use the appropriate tool and mindset and skill set to solve problems. And so I went out and did training in, business analysis and project management and change management and Lego serious play and customer experience and design thinking and behavioral economics. And it all amalgams into this Death Star. For years, I was the Six Sigma guy. And we talked about this earlier. I'm a Lean Six Sigma master black belt. And that's what I was doing because at the time, that's what my organization needed. And now it's sort of come full circle where they realize that they can take advantage of my pain and the assiness to benefit the organization. And so I've been moved into a more enterprise level role that allows me to bring all those different skill sets together to actually look at a problem and pick out what's the right thing to do. So to answer your question, I always was an enterprise analyst. It's just now I'm actually able to execute on that and kick some ass.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Can I say ass on your webinars?
Yeah. You can say much worse things than that. It's fine.
A kick in the arse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I've just had again another good friend and colleague of mine, Stefan from Belgium.
Hey, Stefan.
So he's saying a holistic business analysis, and I know that's something that Stefan's very enthusiastic and speaks about. He's saying holistic business analysis. Really nice to hear this kind of talk. So
yeah.
we're like globally on the same page here, Vince. It's,
awesome. Well, and if Stefan's already speaking about that, get ready, my friend. And there's another shark in the tank. No.
Stefan's a collaborator. He'll.
That's awesome. No, that's all. Yeah, I mean that's really, a lot of what I do. You asked earlier what a typical day looked like. It's hard to actually articulate because there's a lot of work that's happening, sort of under the current, under the water, that is setting up for something bigger. And so, I will use my skills over coffee, as many of us do, to drive a strategic result, knowing that, if I can anticipate that there's a fight coming, I need to resolve it before it becomes a thing. So, I spend a lot of time having sort of strategic discussions, and it's fun operating up at that level. But it's all with I've asked for a coffee budget, and I don't think I'm going to get that, but it's about doing the right thing, and that means, especially in our pre-COVID-19 world, like meeting with people and being social. And that to me has been the biggest adjustment, because I'm an executioner. I want to get things done.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there is a big difference between discussions about doing the right thing versus doing the thing right. Those are different sets of discussions, and it's an important distinction. So a question's come in from, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, from Maya or Maya. What are the key differences between a BA and an enterprise analyst?
It's understanding the strategy and how things fit together. So it's under, like, you have to play. There's other pieces, but they're pieces that you're already doing. You just, again, have to take it from this level to this level. So you're already managing politics. You're managing stakeholders. You're still doing a lot of what a traditional sort of project business analyst does. You're just doing it at a different level. And so in organizations I've worked in my past, as a project BA, let's say your stakeholders, your sponsors would be folks like at the director, maybe one level above. And so that's who you're engaging with, and you have to deal with them in a certain way. But it becomes very different when you're working at that program level, and now your sponsor is your organization's, chief or chair or president or whatever. Like it's just, you have to deal with them differently. And so, it's the same, but it's different. And so it's just about feeling that out. So
different levels of politics.
Different levels of politics, where, there was one instance where I was going in and making a recommendation to the committee, knowing that that there was one stakeholder that wasn't going to like it. And so, because it would have impacted his area significantly. And so, I made sure, one, to share it in advance so that there was no surprise. And it's funny that, you still get called out, understanding that, hey, yeah, you shared it with me, you did the right thing, but I'm still going to lambaste you in front of everybody, so it doesn't look like I went down without a fight. That is, and it just takes some getting used to.
And that's kind of the culture, isn't it? Being the fall person for the change. But fantastic. So Robbie asks for tips to get.
Hey, Robbie.
Tips to get the seat at the table to be able to do the more strategic stuff. And this is going to be a question that a lot of people have. It's like, and the second part of the question is Is it possible to do this without becoming a team manager?
Yeah, so I've not been a team. Well, no, I've had people report to me, but just leading sort of BA type work. So I wouldn't, from an operational standpoint, I've not been a team manager. So Robbie, if that's what you mean by team manager, it certainly makes the journey easier. That being said, I mean, I've had maybe 2 or 3 people report to me at a time. So it's not like I'm managing a big team, and it's, I tend to be sort of hands off when it comes to, and I hate detail. So again, like, I'm the worst business analyst in the world operating down here, because like I hate detail. Like, just give me ambiguity and I'm good. So you can do it without knowing sort of more of the specific context. It's hard to say, to give specifics on how but you certainly can, because I don't consider myself a people manager or a team manager. I do consider myself, though, maybe this is the distinction, I do consider myself a leader.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't think you can do that work if you're not a leader.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I remember hearing the head of a BA team a while back talk. They used this term left shifting. They're like, well, now we're in the project space and we get given stuff to do. So what we're doing as a team is we're getting the credibility to left shift. We want to be involved pre-project. We want to be in that strategic space. We want to be shaping and scoping. And they were essentially doing a lot of exactly the types of things you were saying, Vince. They were out saying, well, we need to be going out and demonstrating that we understand the strategy of this organization, and we need to be building rapport with the stakeholders, and having the senior stakeholders, having coffee with them. And this brings us on to quite nicely to another question from Alish, which is, what about the external world? Until now, we're largely talking about the internal world. Should we take an outside-in view?
Absolutely. I mean, you need to know what's going on. And this is part of that SWOT analysis, right? Like, what are the external threats? Now, a lot of times when you're using that as a business analyst, the external threats are external to the project, but potentially still within the organization.
Yes.
I'm hesitant. You know what? I'm going to say it. Screw it. I raised, and again, Adrian, we were talking about this before, but I raised, as part of this program that I'm currently involved with, I raised earlier in the year, sort of jokingly, but not, what if the zombie apocalypse breaks out and we need to deal with it? And I was sort of like, ha 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 ha, idiot, like, go away. But I was looking, and I'm not saying I predicted this, because that I'm not.
Yeah.
But you always need to be looking at the bigger picture of what happens if, so I do a lot of work in government. What if the government enacts a piece of legislation that impacts your work? Like, you need to be considering that as part of your assessment of, what is the likelihood of this happening? When it happens, how severe is it going to be? And how likely is it to happen at all? So you need to have that external view. I think that just gives a little bit more color. Plus, it helps you look at what else is happening and whether that's something that could work in your environment. So it's not all negative; like, it can be positive as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think this is such an interesting conversation, and the external view often gets lost, and organisations get caught up on their own internal view on what the customer wants or what the market wants. And an example I flippantly throw around sometimes, and I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's like the Blockbuster Videos of the world, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, if you were in Blockbuster Video and you were working on a project, and they're like, well, how can we increase the efficiency of our member sign-up process so people can sign up in 3 minutes rather than 5 minutes? You're like, we're rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic here. Like
yes.
Netflix is coming, BitTorrent is coming.
Yes.
That's not the best response to the drop in profits type of thing. So I think that external view. So okay.
Yeah. So can I just add one thing there? Because this is another one of my mantras, and that links perfectly to something that I say. So I find that the majority of my time is spent convincing people not to automate something.
Oh, tell me about it. Or at
And
least
it's
thinking before they do it.
right. And so I have this, and I've got t-shirts printed up, and I've been doing keynotes and wearing these shirts. Eliminate, then automate. And this I'll draw from sort of lean thinking, right? Don't do, I think it was Peter Drucker that was like, the worst thing you can do is do efficiently that which should not be done at all.
Yeah.
So don't figure out how to automate a process that shouldn't exist. And I call those ugly babies. Like, those are the only way you're going to be able to address the ugly baby is to say, this is an ugly baby, this process, this whatever, this task is an ugly baby. Let's do something about it. And the answer can't default to automation.
Yeah.
So sorry, I just
Yeah.
wanted to throw that in.
No.
Perfect
I mean,
segue there.
It's interesting because I've had some interesting conversations with folks in the past about robotic process automation, RPA, where where it's been like, well, and there are some very, very useful practical applications of RPA. There
Absolutely.
But however, I've had to have conversations where it's like, I don't think we should do this until we understand the process. And like, because we're like an automatic bad process is just a faster and more rigid process.
So get rid of it and stop. And so this is part of what I really like about the stuff that I'm doing now in this transformational program is it's a reimagining, or it's intended to be a reimagining. And part of what I'm part of my role is ensuring that we don't just default back to that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
And so we have an opportunity. So when I get into workshops and I'm there as a sort of observer participant. And so when the facilitator will say something like, so how can we make the current process better? I raise my hand and like, okay, that's the wrong question. The question is, what is the best way for us to achieve X?
An outcome.
Or an outcome, right? Like, what's the best way for us to do that? And then like, that's the process.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So we've got a few similar questions that I'm going to bundle them together. One, and people are, if you don't want to give your name, you can click the anonymous button when you submit a question, which some people are doing, which is absolutely fine, of course. So Helen asks, what's the difference between an enterprise analyst and an enterprise architect? And she says she hasn't seen much execution from enterprise architects, and that's very similar to an anonymous question. Is there any difference between an enterprise analyst and an enterprise architect? So there's some they sound like similar. They're phonetically similar.
Yeah, I think we'll call those the same. 6 of one, half dozen of another. So I'm with Helen. I haven't seen a lot of actual execution.
Lots of modeling, normally. Lots of modeling,
lots of capabilities, and those are good things. Like, I'm not saying you don't need those.
Blueprints are good.
I think an enterprise analyst needs to be able to understand the architecture, and that's one of your work streams that you're looking to align. But then needs to again be that needs to bring that to life. It can't just be, I put something together and it looks pretty. And again, I'm not dissing enterprise architects. There's no reason why actually this couldn't be the same person.
And because right? I was also thinking like business architecture, and I mean business architecture, enterprise architecture, business analysis. Like I it's funny because I become a bit flippant sometimes, and I take the view quite controversially in some organizations that like that delineation is only there because someone created it.
Right. And in my experience, enterprise architecture typically lives within the IT structure. And it's more of a systems architecture than it is an enterprise architecture. I like to layer on not just how do the systems connect, but how do operational areas connect with the finance function and the the frontline sort of service delivery call center.
And how do those
How do
channels
those
work with the customer?
right,
And who is the customer?
right, exactly.
And
And
the
so
suppliers and stuff. So
yeah, so it's not to say that an enterprise architect couldn't fulfill this role.
mm,
I just think that long ago we decided that they would look more at systems integration and not functional integration, and I think that's where the enterprise analyst, to me, is something that lives within the business, to deliver on all of those people process connections and
mm.
not just technology.
Yeah. So we've talked about your sort of career and your enterprise, your journey into enterprise analysis. So
Yeah,
if you were to think about the transferable skills that you brought with you, we've
yeah.
talked about some of them, but what other transferable skills come from the BA world? Or I mean, because I mean, we're kind of really talking about business analysis, but different.
We are, yeah. So the only thing you need to be able to do is understand strategy and leadership. Um, and that's not to say that BAs aren't leaders. I think they are. Again, this is just at in a different stratosphere. And so those are the two things. Like your knowledge and your skill set will serve you well, as a BA and as an enterprise analyst, as an EA.
Mm,
Um, it's just that one missing piece. And so if you can understand context of the organization, the strategic vision of the organization, and then how to connect that back to the operating model or the operating area, and actually get execution out of your strategy, that's it. Like and this is why, again, I'm on the warpath of, this is a viable career, um, um, career for BAs as a progression. Um,
so do you see it as a natural progression? Do you see it as like
yes.
a
I,
yeah? Yeah.
I think if you've got it this is where it's hard for me, Adrian. I've always sort of had that mindset, and so for me the transition was easier.
Yeah.
It is something that you can develop. It does take some time, but it is a possible. So when we look at sort of the BA, and I think it's on the IIBA website, if you can go from being a business analyst to being a senior BA or a product owner, or I don't know if they say project manager, but that's, I mean, let's be realistic, that happens.
Mm.
And we don't we don't judge. um
Maybe we
but
do sometimes.
yeah, I don't know. But this should be up there, because I don't think enough of us see it as a viable career progression. And it's something that I think organizations sorely need. And that's based on my travels from as far west as Hawaii, and as far east as the UK. Like, and that's so I'm not going to say that this is the whole world, but that's a pretty big swath of globe.
Yeah.
I've never seen an organization that either does this or does it well. And that's not to say I'm amazing at it. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. But we need it, because we're the best at understanding a problem and then helping to develop a solution. And so we can't let other people do that know less than us.
Yeah, and we co-create it. We collaborate. We get
Yeah,
the right views, and rather than it being in some smoky, undemocratic room somewhere type of thing.
yeah. Where the hippo decided. Like,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, great. Then you had, this is another thing. Like, I often, and I'm a bit of a pain in the ass. I don't like. I've been asked to do things in the past where it's like, um, can you go do an analysis of a potential solution, and you come back with a recommendation. Like, well, that's cool, but we were going to do this anyway. I was like, okay, then why did you ask me?
Yeah. Yeah.
you knew what you were going to do, just do it. And then, like, if you're going to screw up faster.
Yeah. Well, this is, I remember one of the most bizarre conversations I ever had in my career was when it was a piece of procurement work. It was like an RFP,
Right.
and there was and it was a very objective process. It was one of the, like, the project had given us enough time to do the analysis, right? And we'd done RFI, RFP, scripted demos with the vendors. There was a very robust recommendation, and someone senior in the organization rang me and said, "Could you change your recommendation, please?" And I said,
Yeah.
No. I said,
Right.
no, I can't. I said, you'll make whatever decision you make. And if I'm missing some data, you can criticize the data and the interpretation.
Sure.
I'm not changing this to fit. Like, if you've made the decision, you don't have to. This is the objective recommendation of a BA. Whether you take it or not is
right.
is up to you.
And don't go through the 6-month process of going through an RFP and like, that's for what? If you know what you're going to do, just do it.
Yeah, and another thing that really resonated with me, Vince, was, I know we were talking about this off screen, but you mentioned sometimes we need to be a pain in the ass, and like, actually, one of the most, I think, pleasing bits of feedback I've ever got was from a stakeholder who started the feedback with, "Adrian is a complete pain in the ass," but then he added, "in a good way."
Yes.
And he put, "the program is a better place for it." And I it's probably one of the most memorable pieces of feedback I've had. But sometimes we do have to stand up for something.
Yeah, and I think the best BAs that I've ever encountered are able to sort of straddle the line between healthy dissent and playing politics.
Yeah.
And that has, like, the politics part, despite, like, I have my undergrad is in political science. That to me makes sense, and I hate playing politics. But it wasn't till I started to understand, okay, I need to do this so that when I am a pain in the ass, people don't think I'm just doing it to be a pain in the ass. There's actually, okay, maybe he has something to say, and there's some truth. So, the politics has been hard for me. But you need to, but how do you find that nice balance between that healthy dissent? Because I think the best BAs bring that healthy dissent where they're not afraid to say no, and you have to do that. Organizations that stop that really are poorer off for it.
Yeah, for sure. That kind of segues neatly into another question that's been asked, which is from Jason.
Sure. Hey, Jason.
And Jason says, "How do you know when you're doing the job well as an enterprise analyst? And alternatively, what does it mean to do the job badly?" Great question.
Yeah. So that is a good question. So I'm gonna go back to an example from the sporting world, and I try not to use sporting examples, but here we go. I grew up playing what you, Adrian, would call football, but I grew up playing soccer, and and again, being Canadian, shout out Canada, woo. We've got hockey. To me, the best games were the ones that you didn't notice that the referee was there, right? The game flowed, and it seemed effortless and seamless, and it was just, at the end of the match, it was like, I didn't even notice that the ref was there, right? And again, when you do it poorly, you know who the referee is, you know where he lives, you know how many people are in his family.
Really?
Ooh,
Wow.
ooh. I'm kidding.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like you know them, and like, you should never know the referee's name.
yeah.
Right? So I'm just going to draw a parallel there. When you're doing this work well, it's almost like other people are getting the credit for doing the work that you are sort of behind the scenes piecing together. Odd.
Definitely. So Fantastic. So another comment from Alesh, which is like EA, so enterprise analyst, is a business model modeler. That's a very meta comment, an interesting comment.
Hmm.
So he's put EA is a business model
Yeah.
modeler.
I've not thought of that. I've not thought of it that way. But yes, they are modeling the business, but then taking that extra step to actually bring the model to life. Like a model is just a representation. Then you need to bring it to life. And so how do you then do that? But that's an interesting comment. I like that.
Yeah,
I like
that's
that.
that's one that I'm going to need to think about. It's
Yeah.
a very profound and useful statement, but I need an hour or two to think that one
Yeah.
through. I think, which is it's always a good sign of a really
Yeah.
good, thoughtful comment, isn't it? So,
This was not in the original questions.
yeah, this wasn't on the script. So,
Oh.
um, okay, so Stefan asks a question that I suspect many people will have on their minds, which is how do organizations or companies appreciate the enterprise analysis role?
Yeah.
And any views on that in Canada versus elsewhere in the world?
Yeah, I don't know I don't know that a lot of organizations do. I
Mm,
mean, they may have I'm only now sort of starting to encounter people both in Canada and I do a fair bit of traveling in the States. Um, where they have sort of an enterprise analyst. It's typically, they have BAs that they make senior BAs that are trying to sort of they've been sort of tasked with doing enterprise level work, but they're not going the full distance. Like they still want them in a project environment. So they're not actually freeing up resources to be able to do that work. So I would say, this is something, despite it being included as part of Babok since, since I was since I became a BA.
mm,
um it's not something like it was seen as something that was sort of beyond the traditional business analyst. And so you actually don't see a lot of organizations. Now, I was fortunate enough in the work that I'm doing now to be able to convince the right people that this was something that was absolutely needed on a program of the magnitude that we're working on. And it was really about ensuring that there was someone who was impartial and objective and had the skills to be able to make calls that other people couldn't. So when you're aligning different work streams,
mm.
um, everyone has sort of, if I asked you to, what's the right thing to do when you're aligning technology and business process and design thinking and whatever, like you are going to back the thing that you are there for. So if you're leading the business process team, the
Yeah,
business process is right and we need to change the technology.
yeah,
If you're
yeah,
backing the technology, it's no, the technology is right and we need to change these other things. So it's a role that is meant to be sort of judge and jury, that is and judges and juries are intended to be uh impartial. And so I don't care what the outcome is, as long as it's a positive one for the organization. So um it's something that I don't see a lot, to really answer the question, and I think it's something that we need.
yeah. So we've just literally had two questions come in within like the last 2 minutes,
Yeah.
which are a really neat segue. So another from Stefan and one from and again I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Apologies if I'm not. Nefra, I think Nefra. So Stefan asks, so what can we do to inspire organizations or companies to more appreciate the role? And
Mm,
Nefra asks, is there a good way to demonstrate the value of enterprise analysis to an organization, and who are the right people to convince?
right. Both great questions. As with anything, getting an organization to change or to adopt something new is a bit like trying to bring a battleship to port. It's going to take a long time to be able to one, convince them of the need, two, make them think it was their idea,
Yeah.
and then three, actually bring it to reality. It takes a long time. So I'll tell you a little bit about sort of how I did it. And it was, without getting into the specifics of where I work and the types of work that I'm doing, because I'm here representing me. But I would meet with key stakeholders over, probably a 2-3 year period while this work was sort of being discussed, and just, I planted the seeds of, I think we're missing an opportunity here, and here's how I think we can address it. And so I think by doing that, I became sort of the voice of, like, I wasn't just bringing a problem and saying, hey, your team sucks, and you need me to fix it. It was like, it's things are fine, but they could be better. And here's how I think you might want to think about it. And so, you do that enough, and eventually it sticks. And here's where things get really interesting, or got interesting for me at least. It was once all of the things that I sort of flagged as, hey, I see this being a problem. And it might not be a problem now, but I think it will be in about 6 months. When those things come to pass, it's sort of like, oh, you were right. Okay, what else can you be right about? And so, you take a bit of a leap in flagging things that are problems, because nobody wants to hear problems, especially before it becomes a problem. But if you can flag those things and say, look, I foresee an issue coming up in this, for your process team. You don't have the right people. You need, and I've said this in a previous client where they were undergoing a process transformation, and so they went out and hired a bunch of green belts, Six Sigma green belts. And I said, you actually don't need green belts. You're as part of this transformation, you're not continuously improving. You need business analysts. No. We need green belts. We need green belts. And they went out and hired tens of green belts. And I'm like, if you gave me that 6 months and 3 or 4 assassin BAs, we could have gotten that work done. And so it was just, understanding, again, bringing it back to how do things fit together. And sometimes people need to fail before they're willing to let you try to succeed.
It's really interesting, Vince, because as you were saying that, I was reminded of an organization I used to work for where we were trying to promote the understanding of the BA team, because we had a fantastic BA capability. We had a really great leader, like a head of function. It was a shared service, so we weren't aligned with IT, so we were going into projects. But we were trying to spread the word, and we were trying to get even more. And we were already involved in the strategic stuff. We wanted to get more involved, and so me and a few of my colleagues came up with this crazy idea of running presentations for the chief exec, the chief exec and the board. And we said, well, how we get some of literally the CEO's time, and we said, well, speak to his assistant, right, and see. And he did. He took us up on the offer, right? Now, it was in a few months' time because CEOs are busy, right? And ironically, the day that we got with him, he was leaving. One of those emails where you get the CEOs leaving to pursue other interests. Or for whatever purposes. But he gave us probably about 2 hours of his time.
Wow.
And we asked him lots of questions, and we asked him about how to get the message of business analysis across, and he was quite blunt. And I won't use the exact language he used, but he said, the thing you have to remember is if you're a CEO, your greatest fear is stuffing up.
Mm.
And he said, you are the people who can give me the assurance that me, my team, my reports, we're not stuffing up. And that completely changed my view, because I'm like, wow, if we can sometimes say, it's like the advertising thing, FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, doubt. Those are the things
Right.
that create, obviously we need to talk about the good stuff as well. But if we say, if you don't do this, here's the possible risk, here's the possible implication. If you're okay with that, then okay. But just so you know, here's the risk. But
right.
Interesting.
And I've started doing that, leveraging the Lego serious play method, because I haven't seen anything that can coalesce a team around a strategy as quickly as that method has, or as I've seen it work. Because once people get their hands on the Lego and start building things and start sharing stories and sharing experiences, it really helps to bring everyone together. And so I always try, at the beginning of sort of any big engagement, is to get people's time. And it is hard, but get people's time and just for half a day, let them play with some Legos. And it's not just playing with Legos. There's a structure to it, but it's about, at the end of this, we're going to come out of this with some, guiding principles for our team and how we're going to operate. Or we're going to come out of this with a shared vision of our future state. And then we'll do the work to figure out what projects we need to get there. But
Exactly.
we'll have this like North Star of, this is what we want, and this is what we want our organization to be, or our business unit to be. Like it just brings people together so quickly, because they are able to share things that they maybe wouldn't when they feel that they can't be vulnerable.
Yeah. Fantastic. So this is probably the final question we have time for, because we're going to hit time very soon. So it's Lawrence, who's from Texas.
Lawrence, my
Yeah.
man, Lawrence.
Lawrence from Texas.
I know Lawrence.
Lawrence says, our company has an enterprise project management office, but not an enterprise business analysis office. But we should. Yes, you should.
Yes, you should.
Being a modeler of business models sounds similar to the program manager over the EPMO, which is
enterprise project manager. Yeah. So potentially, right? Like this can run in parallel to the PMO. So this is not about dominating the PMO or taking over the PMO, but the PMO has a different. They're tasked with something very, very different. And again, this is what I've seen. They're not so concerned with outcomes or strategic outcomes. They're more concerned with, are we following the right process and gating and governance, right? Which is very important. Like you absolutely need that. But that seems to be in a lot of the PMOs that I've seen, that's their concern, is are we doing things the right way? And Adrian, you said earlier, it's not just are we doing things the right way, it's are we doing the right things? And so, you could set up sort of a sister or a dotted line EBAO, that could be structured the same way, but is focused on something different. So, but I think that comes back to, I think it was Alish's question about, it's a business model or modeler or something.
Modeler.
Yeah. So we gotta but I mean, that's one way that it could work. The challenge then is an EPMO or a PMO just in general is something that is widely accepted. And so, there's that ingrained, well, of course we need a PMO, versus now creating something new. And so that's going to take a lot more time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So just before we close, Vince, if there's like one or two key takeaways that you want people to leave this session with, what would they be?
So I would say that you already have 90% of what you need to operate at an enterprise level. Closing the gaps is the challenge. And so, understanding your organization's strategy is key to that. And context is important. And it's hard for me to do that work because when I go into a new organization, I have to learn everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would say for you, if you're already working in an organization where you see the need for this, then you should try to do it because you already have the context. So that was one. Uh, two, see this as, and I'm over the course of this year and probably next year and beyond, I'm going to be beating this drum of, we need more of this because we can't let people that don't understand the analysis do this work.
Mm-hmm.
We as BAs are the best at doing this type of work. And there was a question. Sorry, I'm also following along. And Melina asked, "Can I use Assassin BA?" No, that's mine. You cannot use Assassin BA. But that's what you need to turn into. You need to turn into an assassin who can, sort of covertly steer the organization to a more positive outcome. And that's hard to do. So that's two. And you asked for three more or three. Can I just do two? They were two good ones.
Two is good.
Yeah, they were two good ones.
That's more than
Yeah.
enough. So yeah, Assassin BA, stealthy BA as well, I think. So
Yeah. And it's hard, right? Because you have to be able to work in the shadows. So sort of if you've played the Assassin's Creed video game series, like you've got to work in the shadows. And I've actually introduced in my team, for those that are familiar with the game, like the concept of nothing is true. Like there is no truth. There is no, there's no sacred cow.
Yeah.
Nothing is true. And therefore the second part, everything is permitted. Like we can do anything. Then you have to layer in what's feasible and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But you have the opportunity to explore the realm of possibility.
Explore before discounting. Explore
Yes.
and expand before converging. So fantastic. Well, that's a fantastic place to leave our conversation, Vince. I am certain that people will want to stay in touch with you. They'll want to know about your podcast.
Yeah.
How can people connect with you on LinkedIn? How can people keep the conversation going, Vince?
Yeah, and I want to encourage you to do that because I like just being able to help people out. So the best place for you to reach me is at my website, vincentmirabelli.com. You can also go to, and this is sort of breaking news for you, Adrian. I've sort of dissolved my old company. I'm kicking up something new, and it's lovetheprocess.ca. Lovetheprocess.ca, which is going to be sort of my training and coaching and speaking sort of brand. But yeah, you can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I'm on TikTok for some reason, but I haven't created any videos. I have an account, but I haven't made any videos yet. I like to taste and I try things, and I haven't found the business application for me on TikTok, but it doesn't stop me from watching stupid videos. And yeah, you can check out the podcast, Business Not As Usual, on Apple and Google and wherever your podcasts are found.
Yeah. Well, Vince, thank you so much. That's been fantastic. And to anyone whose question we haven't been able to answer, apologies, but you can connect with Vince on LinkedIn and keep
Absolutely.
the conversation going. So the only thing that's left for me to say is, again, a massive thank you, Vince, for taking the time out of your busy diary. Thank you.
Anytime, man.
Thank you to everyone who has attended live, or if you're watching the recording. Do remember there are more webinars coming, so watch this space. The only thing I'll say in closing for all of us, particularly if you're watching live in the middle of the coronavirus outbreak, is please Although it's a cliche, stay safe, follow your government's advice, and even if you think you're healthy, you might be an asymptomatic carrier. So come on, the only way we're going to get through this is get this through together, and if everyone's sensible. So on that note, enjoy the rest of your evening and the rest of your day, Vince, and see you all again soon. Goodbye.